welcome to The Well. I am Brandon Edgens.
And I am Anson Mount.
And what have you been up to, my friend? I know that you're busy.
I have been busy being a father. We're sort of in that stage where, she's starting to understand sequences.
Explain that. What do you mean explain to the non-parents out there?
Yeah, so for instance, she's memorized her bedtime routine, so she knows when we move from putting on pajamas to getting the stuffed animals so she can pretend to brush their teeth, which means then it's then time for her to brush her teeth. And then we get into the rocking chair for story time. And then last night I was putting her to bed and I turned around and she had my reading glasses in her hand and were handing them to me. Wow. I know, right? And,
wow.
And she's also, it's what's wild about being a parent, particularly at this stage of development, is seeing the world through fresh eyes, their fresh eyes, and realizing how weird the world actually is. So, for instance, Dara took Clover to the Target the other day, and that's where we get a lot of her toys, or is on the toy aisle at Target. And they were walking through the toy aisle, and Clover's first time she did this, she saw there were some of the toys there that we had bought her, right? So she sees these toys and she points at them and goes, and then turns to Dara, and clearly she's thinking, what are my toys doing here? And Dara tries to explain, well, those aren't really we have toys that are exactly like those that we bought at this store, which has the right to distribute these toys in the United States, but really the intellectual property is owned by Hasbro. She doesn't get any of that, right?
No, no one gets that.
So she's ready to go on with her shopping, and Clover stops her and is like, and tries to reach for the toys because she's like, we can't leave these here. We can't leave my toys. We got to take them home. So, yeah, and when you think about that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But all this other stuff is just, man, we're a complicated species. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun rediscovering the world with her.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I now know what you mean by sequence recognition and understanding, like, this leads to this. And that's part of that whole process that leads to where we all are right now as old people, is that you just start assuming things, like, well, naturally this means this and this is followed by this, because it always has been. And it's interesting to watch someone wire those together for the first time, and if you're not careful, not that anyone can control this, you end up wiring things together weirdly, and like, that's why it's funny to study animal behavior, because they're a lot less complicated. And I always tell the story about a guy who had a cat for the very first time, and I brought it home from the shelter. It was hungry. It was kind of the process of getting the cat fed for the first time was a bit, spastic and rushed. So he opens the cabinet where the cat food is in. The cat's impatient for the food, bonks the cat in the head with the cabinet door, and now the cat runs over to the bowl. I know this is where the food goes, and he's like, God, calm down, get out of the way. And then he kind of, as he's scooping the food, it falls off the spoon, lands on the cat's head, rolls off the cat's head into this bowl. Okay, I think you know where I'm going with this. So that's how you're fed. That's how this cat was like, this is how the feeding it happens. So now when it's time for food, he runs in front of the cabinet with his head down like this, like, do it. Hit me, bonk, now. All right, now drop it on my head. Yes.
Well, this is probably around the same developmental stage when, going back to our episode about synesthesia, where a lot of those connections get laid, right?
That is exactly what I was going to do next. Right. And if you want to conduct an experiment, you should do this. Give her colored blocks that are all one color. all the letters are one, all green. And see if she sees all green letters from now on. If you're confused about what we're talking about, go back and listen to the episode, parts 1 and 2 of our episode with Melissa McCracken, who is a painter who has synesthesia and paints what she sees when she listens to music. And there's a lot in there about, it becomes an episode about brain development and how you automatically wire things together, whether they're supposed to be wired together or not.
Yeah. I really like that episode. You did a bang up job on that.
Thank you, man. It's still my favorite, I think.
And it features our ne'er-do-well college friend, Chance, who's now a neurologist.
Yeah, our ne'er-do-well who's also a neurologist, so I don't know if we can keep calling him that. But yeah, he's great, and he's great, and he's of also no help at all in that episode.
Yeah, I remember, was it when you were asking him, so what do you do as a neurologist? And he was like, not much.
Well, he used to describe it as, when other people ask him, what do you do as a neurologist? And I have to do my Chance impression now. It's like, and like your grandfather or grandmother has a stroke or something. And then a guy comes in and says, all right, she's had a stroke and we got to wait and see. We're going to monitor and see what happens. That's what I do. We're going to watch and see what happens. Because there's not much you can do. That's the problem with being a neurologist. And there's not much intervention you can do. It's got to be something traumatic, and that's for a brain surgeon. I am running around a lot. I just came back from Minnesota. I was in Minnesota for 2 weeks. We took the family up to Rainy Lake, which is one of the lakes up in Boundary Waters, northern Minnesota. And I love that place. And this time is not the whole family, but 15 people on a houseboat, which is like, I've never been on one of those things before. It's basically a floating RV. This one had a hot tub on the roof and a slide. So you could go take a hot tub and then slide off into the cold lake water, climb back up, do it again. It was fabulous. It was amazing. There was only one nightmarish aspect of it. It was all like paradise until the sun went down. And then a plague of mosquitoes, the likes of which I have never seen before in my life, descends upon the houseboat. And then it became a weird kind of family bonding thing where it was like, let's all kill mosquitoes for the next 3 hours as a team. And it was like Space Invaders, like they go boop boop. It was so gross by the end. I don't know how they keep these things clean, because by the end of the trip, every 6 inches inside of that houseboat just was splatter marks, just dead mosquitoes everywhere. It was unreal.
Imagine some blood.
And some blood. Oh yeah, that was when we knew that we had gotten one that had, it was a weird way. It was like scoring points, like those were worth more. Like Space Invaders, there was the low hanging was like, he hadn't done anything yet. That bastard already got somebody. Die, gotcha.
We have this thing in the South where we think that we got the worst mosquito problem in the world. No, there are places in Alaska where you can die if you don't have mosquito netting.
Can you imagine?
He will suck you dry.
Imagine that, being exsanguinated by just hundreds and hundreds of little mosquitoes. I know that my friend Chuck, who's does camera work around, for Discovery and BBC and stuff like that, he was doing a job they were doing a documentary thing on the Panama Canal, so he was in Panama. Yeah. By the way, and if anyone knows their history, remembers the reason they had to keep stopping construction on the Panama Canal is because everyone kept getting yellow fever, I think. Everyone was dying because there were no workers to work in the Panama, and it was because of the mosquitoes. And that leads to the largest, full-scale warfare against mosquito population that the world has ever conducted. But Chuck was down there to film this, and he was driving along in his car. They're out in the jungle. Car stops. Somebody comes back to ask him a question. He rolls down the window. His arm is on the edge of the window. He's like, yes. And they just say a few words. They talk for a second. And he looks down, and at first he thinks, my arm isn't that hairy. It was just hundreds and hundreds of mosquitoes all lined up on his arm already. And he was like, it gives you some idea of the mosquito problem down there. Yeah. But we're here for a drop. Do you want to do the drop spiel?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, The Drop is a segment we do that is they're not our normal episodes. Our normal episodes are about a particular subject or guest. Usually, you can, if you want to hear those, it's great to start at the beginning of our podcast and work your way forward. But no, this is a segment that we do occasionally where Brandon and I, these are conversations we would normally have anyways. And what we do is we talk about everything that we've been seeing, listening to, reading, that we thought we would like to share with you as recommendations for consumables. And yeah, I guess that's the way to put it. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get on with we're doing a one subject drop this time, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. We both independently discovered this show on Netflix called Beef.
You started this.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, you're the one who backed into me like a psycho.
You're the one that flipped me off all roided out and
Are you guys leaving, or are you just gonna sit there?
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Say it again! I dare you to say it again!
Was it me that texted you, or you texted me? I think I texted you.
You texted me.
Yeah. And because I was just, I mean, my wife and I wasn't sure. My wife wanted to watch it. I was like, okay. And then immediately sucked in, and I knew it was good. And then when I got to the ending, I was like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. It may have actually had that thought before the ending, but the ending just really blew me away. And I immediately texted Brandon because I was like, he has to watch this. And he'd already seen the whole thing. So yeah, what was your impression?
It starts off with a pretty simple premise. And the first couple of episodes are just like a house on fire. I just loved it. I liked all of it. I did feel like it was starting to get into this go in the direction that a lot of episodic television goes into, which feels becoming a little twistier than was really necessary. So but I still liked it. It was still good, but it also felt like, okay, but you know, what started out as really original, starting to feel a little more familiar. That's a better way to put it. And then that last episode, and it was almost like an anti everything I'd seen up until that time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
everything goes down the same hole. This didn't. And I don't know. Are we going to spoil it? We're recommending it. So that's
Not sure we should spoil it, but I'll say this. I got to the ending of the penultimate episode, and I thought to myself, wait, how can there be another episode? How can you possibly, number one, go beyond this, and number two, do better than this? And they did. I was like, oh, that's the perfect.
I have never seen a show that dares to question its own premise at the very last episode. You know, to set you up like that and take you kind of with them, and then at the last episode kind of take this almost philosophical, you know, like, well, hold on a second. Maybe not.
But maybe we should work backwards for a second and at least tell people what this show is about. So
That's true, right? Nah.
So it is. This is a show. First of all, it's helmed by. The leads are Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong, and who are both excellent.
good.
And it's about two people who find each other. Two people who are, for completely different reasons, of their own making. They find themselves in places in their life where they're deeply unhappy. A chance encounter turns these people into each other's nemesis, and they start expressing their frustration at life at each other. So they sort of become the cipher for each other's angst, and they develop this weird relationship.
Yeah, it's a relationship
based on their mutual hate of one another. And my original thought is, oh, I know where this is going.
Right.
They're gonna fall in. No. It doesn't go down any of the paths that I expected it to. And at the same time, it makes you laugh, and it makes your heart hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much every episode. That's what I really loved about it. Before before ever talking about the ending. I thought it was consistent throughout. Well, very well cast. Maria Bello is also in it. And man, Ali Wong. Holy cow. I knew she was a talented, successful comedian. I had no idea that she was an actor, and quite a good one.
I would want to circle back to the point, because I think I may have made it sound like that there were some problems with it. You liked every single episode. I just started to feel like I've been here before. Like, okay, this is good, but I'm not surprised anymore, which is a common feeling for me. So that's not a diss. That's not a criticism.
There is there's an altered reality sequence in the last episode. I'm not giving really too much away here, but there's an altered reality sequence that is handled in a way I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in a way that is so much simpler than maybe anything I've seen before trying to do that same thing.
Totally. I agree.
So much is left up to the performances.
And the editing. It's really just performance and edit. It's just sort of little misdirected, they're not fake outs, but you just through the editing and the writing, they do a very good job of recreating that sense of time slippage that happens in altered realities. And it doesn't get tempted to go down that, oh, isn't it all weird and psychedelic and colorful and surreal, which is where most filmmakers go. It's all emotional.
It allows them to achieve a state of pure empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how transformative that can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I have to ask, are you wearing nail polish right now?
I am.
Why?
Because Sharon ran out of fingernails to test her nail polish on. She's mixing colors. So she had already painted every one of her nails a different color, and she wasn't happy yet. So these are the three, and I'm pretty sure that this one is the winner.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Mm-hmm. Very confident. It's funny. This was days ago, and I keep forgetting it's there. And yesterday, I went on a pizza tour in Brooklyn, and I've occasionally be talking to somebody and gesturing, and so they'll be like, blah, 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 blah. All right. Oh well. Yes, I'm wearing nail polish.
Well, I tell you what else I appreciated about Beef is that it was set very specifically, not just in Los Angeles, but in the Asian American community in Los Angeles, which the writer, director, the actors, they know that community very well. I knew very little about that community. It's a very specific subset of the LA scene, right? And I really appreciated that I was able to learn about that community while I was watching the show, and it played into it quite well. I got to tell you, and it 4 or 5 years ago, first of all, the show would not have been made about 4, 5, 6 years ago. Just wouldn't. Or the the obvious note would be, do they have to be Asian? That would be because these companies are run by people who have business degrees, right? And for some reason, when they come in to the business, they somehow think that magically bestows upon them a knowledge of story structure and entertainment and what works. And one of the biggest bullshit presumptions in the industry is that people want to watch what they're familiar with. What? That's never made any sense. If I wanted to engage with something that was familiar to me, I'd turn off the frickin' TV and turn to the people in the living room with me. I don't want to talk to those people. I want to have an experience outside of my own. That's kind of the point.
Right. But you know better than me that the same people base everything on precedent. So, you know, that's why there's that joke that even people outside the industry are familiar with. You know, it's like this movie crossed with this movie. You have two successful movies that everyone knows, they all like, so they're going to like this new version, which is this times this other thing, like the joke and the player, you know?
Right. And yet the similarity between those things, particularly in terms of race and ethnicity and culture, is they're all the same.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what do you have to draw upon for precedents that is going to take you outside of the box? Not a lot.
Right. Well, and that's why they had to wait until Crazy Rich Asians,
right,
and a few others. I think that was the main one that went blockbuster, and then finally, these graph paper brained accountants at the studios are like, "Oh, okay, I guess people will watch that kind of thing, but it's got to start the same people and be about the same thing." Is also the reason why Dua was able to make The Harvest. He couldn't have made that 4 or 5 years ago. He was trying 4 or 5 years ago to make that movie. He wanted to make a film about Hmong Americans, that specific sub-Asian community.
Yeah,
and
very specific. Yeah.
And when he brought producers on, other Asian producers, even they were like, "Can't we make this about Vietnamese?" Or Chinese people. "Can't we make this about a Chinese family instead?" You know, that's how ingrained this is in producers' minds, you know. And, you know, kudos to him for being like, no, this is, you know, there's never been a Hmong story told ever. It's time. Let's do one. And he got it done. You know, hats off to him. So I got an interesting invitation from Bilge.
Okay. Bilge
Abiri, the film critic, a friend of ours. I asked him if I could possibly get a sneak peek at Oppenheimer.
Oh.
And he has seen it somehow. Well, because he's a critic, he's seen it 5 times already. And so this is all a long way of saying, I'm going to the world premiere tomorrow of Oppenheimer at the AMC IMAX here in New York.
Well, I guess there are available seats now.
Why? Oh. What? Why? I don't get it. Is something happening? Is there something happening in your world that I'm not aware of?
You're taking Cillian Murphy's seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's gonna have his name, you know, printed out and taped to the seat. That's the one I'm gonna sit in. Bill had a great idea for a way to promote the film that, of course, nobody tried to do or follow up on, but I thought it was funny. Hire like a strong man, like world's strongest man, to see if he could bench press the print for Oppenheimer.
How long is it?
The movie is like 2.5 hours.
Okay. That's not too bad.
No, but it's on 70 minutes, but it's on IMAX. Have you seen these platters? The platter being the thing that's on? It's the size of this room.
Oh my God.
Once it's all spliced together, it's something like, I'll get the number wrong, but it looks to be like 8 feet wide, maybe more, probably more. And I think it weighs something like 400 pounds or something like that.
What?
Maybe more. I don't know.
Edit note. The IMAX film prints for Oppenheimer were 11 miles long and weighed 600 pounds.
35 millimeter film, which everybody knows what that looks like, or most old people. And IMAX there's 70 millimeter, and IMAX is even larger than that. It's the biggest camera format.
Has IMAX not moved to digital projectors?
There is an IMAX digital format, but it's Christopher Nolan, and he wants
to project real film.
Yes, he's keeping film alive. I talked to Bilge about it. He was like, "Oh," when he first saw it, he texted me. He was like, "Oh, it's incredible. You're going to love it. It's mostly just scientists talking." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "But in IMAX." So this is probably one of the most important moments in science history, and it hasn't been told. Certainly not at this scale. Certainly not 400 pounds worth of it. It's also the heaviest film. Why didn't they just say that in the promotions?
The heaviest film ever.
This is the heaviest film ever made, man. Oh man, yeah. God, how could they miss that? I need to get on the phone, call Nolan. You miss an obvious one here, buddy. Well, we're reaching the end of our drop. We've talked about beef, talked about what we did over the summer. We've talked about the world's heaviest film. And I'm going to end it with an article. Sorry, I'm laughing. I don't even know how to read this without blowing it. It's from an article conducted by researchers at the University College London. Very short. In this experiment, we manipulated what men believed about their own penis sizes relative to those of others. We gave them false information, stating that the average penis size was larger than it is, reasoning that these males would feel that their own penises were smaller than the average. These men were compared to other men who were told that the average penis size was smaller than the true average. We then asked both groups of men to rate how much they would like to own a sports car. These facts and questions were buried among other information so as to mask our hypothesis from the participants. We found that males, and males over 30 in particular, rated sports cars as much more desirable when they were made to feel that they had a small penis. So, what we all suspected has now been recorded in the annals of science.
What possible scientific application would this be good for? Who came up with this?
How much
Who justified this for the funding it must have required?
It doesn't say
Somebody with a small penis.
or I was going to say women. Women researchers like, you know what, I bet, probably over martinis, like, you know what, I bet, like, well, let's do a study and see if we can prove what we already think. But that's confirmation bias. That's not science. Yeah, I'm calling into question the veracity and reliability of this entire report now.
The Well is produced, edited, and recorded by Anson Mount and me, Brandon Edgens. Theme music written by Jonathan Myberg and performed by Brandon Edgens. Until next time, have a good time.